Well, good morning. It is Monday, the 24th of August, 2020. Glad you could join us right here on TV 47, our head studios right here in Nairobi. It's always a pleasure to have you join us every other day. It's Monday, and you know what it do? Of course, we always ensure that your day or your week kickstarts on a very good note. I'm right here to ensure that you're informed, you're entertained, as we have candid discussions that involve you and that revolve around you. Should be part of this discussion. Hashtag Morning Cafe at Linda_Alela TV47KE. Welcome on board. Like I said, my name is Linda Alela, and it's time then that we kickstart your week on a very good note as we take a look at the stories that we have prepared right here. We take a look at what is on the newspapers, and importantly, we delve deep in what has been the weekend of the politics of the weekend. Also, later on the broadcast, we incorporate the lifestyle segment where we'll be all about matters nutrition, and we take a look at the GMO stuff, and we get to know the dangers, the goodness of it all moving forward. So indeed, it's going to be a packed Monday for you. So keep it right here, right from 6 a.m. all the way to 9 a.m. It is always a pleasure. Karibu sana. So much happening in the world of politics, so much happening on matters corruption, even as KEMSA stories take another notch higher as it has been condemned by many. And that's exactly what I'll be taking you through, what it is that my team has in store, and importantly also what will be on the newspaper. All this has been captured right there. So we're going to have great discussions with the panelists that will be joining me later on, and I'd urge you to be part and parcel of this conversation. Like I said earlier on, we'll also be rolling the numbers to call down on your screen so you are engaged and you can as well call live. But importantly, let's first pick these stories. And evangelical church leaders have condemned the runway corruption at KEMSA and the Ministry of Health following massive looting of funds meant to aid the war on the COVID-19 pandemic. They have said that the church will not sit and watch as the public coffers are milked dry. Mwangi Maina reports.
Church leaders led by Archbishop Mark Kariuki have decried the runaway corruption at a time when the country is battling an invisible enemy threatening the lives of millions of Kenyans. They have condemned the despicable act and called on government to walk the talk.
Has anybody sat down to think the pain and the bitterness that may be developing in the lives of the people who were quarantined and had to pay for their quarantine, while there is money that was given, and this money is going into people's pockets, and then we just keep quiet? It's not right.
They also want an expeditious process to bring the scrupulous and greedy culprits to book.
Wale ambao walihusika wafuatwe, washikwe, watumbukizwe ndani na warudishe pesa. Warudishe hizo senti ziende zikafanye ile kazi zilikuwa zifanye. Kwa sababu madhara ambayo yanakuja ni kwamba hata zile zilikuwa zinatolewa sasa za malaria, za HIV AIDS, wengine wanasema wangependa waliokuwa wanataka kuzitoa wangependa kuzirudisha.
The church has promised to take a new approach in the fight against corruption at a time when the opposition is weakened to keep the government on toes.
Tangu waende katika handshake, where are they? I am not sure where ODM is. The church would like to see ODM the way it was when we voted for the ODM to become the opposition party. So can they go back to their job?
We are people who pray and hear God properly. So we are saying, we are observing and we are really watching. We are really watching so hard.
They have expressed concern and deep regret as donors threatened to cut COVID-19 funding earmarked for Kenya.
That money that you have stolen from the sick, it will not benefit you in any way. Neither will it benefit your children in any way.
At the same time, ANC party leader Musalia Mudavadi has called on President Uhuru Kenyatta to form a judicial commission of inquiry over the looting of COVID-19 funds.
Na uwezo wa kipekee, uwezo ambao hakuna mtu yeyote mwingine ambao nao. Aunde tume ya kisheria ya judicial ambayo itachunguza wale ambao wamehusika na ufisadi katika wizara ya afya.
Mudavadi has also called on Kenyans not to give up on the war against coronavirus in light of the wanton corruption relating to COVID-19 funds and donations. As the talk on corruption at KEMSA and the Ministry of Health continues to take center stage, church leaders want President Uhuru Kenyatta to crack whip at the Ministry of Health and at KEMSA to ensure that all officials who are involved in embezzlement of funds have been brought to book. Reporting for TV 47 from Nairobi, my name is Mwangi Maina.
All right, and still on the KEMSA runway, corruption and the ODM party has come under sharp criticism for calling on investigative agencies to go slow on the matter. Kenya National Union of Nurses Secretary General Seth Panyako has taken offense with a statement by ODM Secretary General Edwin Sifuna, saying that the EACC and DCI should wait until a proper audit has been conducted at KEMSA. Panyako decries that ODM is shielding corruption suspects.
On Saturday, ODM Secretary General Edwin Sifuna called for a structured probe on the alleged corruption at KEMSA. Sifuna argued that the investigative agencies should be called in once a thorough audit has been completed. Remarks that have elicited sharp criticism across the political divide and health workers union.
It is disheartening to hear no less than a senior government official, no less a senior government official than the deputy president, go public with improper statement that at least now nobody will blame me for stealing COVID-19 funds. This statement suggests that it is okay for the funds to be stolen for as long as he is not to blame.
And we want to call ODM to come out and tell us what are they defending. We know, and the names are there in public, you know them, that two legislators, very vocal legislators of ODM, were involved, were caught with their hands in the cookie jar in the KEMSA scandal. We want to know how much did the ODM leadership, the top leadership of ODM, how much did they benefit from this KEMSA scandal?
Nataka kuuliza Raila Amolo Odinga aambie wananchi wa Kenya ikiwa kama yeye ndiye alimduma Sifuna, kwa sababu kila mbu anayepwega ako na mwenye mmiliki, na mmiliki wa Sifuna sisi tunajua ni mheshimiwa Raila Amolo Odinga. Kwa hivyo ikiwa kama Raila Amolo Odinga umewacha kuwa shujaa wa kupigania mambo ya haki ya Wakenya vile tunapokufahamu na ile heshima ambayo tumekupatia, tunataka.
Jubilee Party Deputy Secretary General Caleb Kositany calling on Raila Odinga to name and shame officials who benefited from the multi-billion KEMSA scam.
Na kuipa KEMSA ni kuua wauguzi. Kuipa KEMSA ni kuua madaktari. Kuipa KEMSA ni kuua wananchi wa Kenya. Alafu unakwenda kuwasema kwamba ufisadi haupo kule KEMSA, ni mambo ya waandishi wa habari. Wewe Sifuna, wewe ni kijana mdogo sana. Kama unaingia siasa ati uende uibe au utumiwe, umepewa pesa, umehongwa, atutetee wafisadi ambao wako ndani ya ODM, wacha nikuambie, get out of health sector. Hautafanya ufisadi kwa idara ya afya. Mimi kama kiongozi ndani ya wizara ya afya nione wenzangu wakifa kwa sababu Sifuna umeandikwa pale umekuwa mbwa wa kutetea waisi.
Kenya National Union of Nurses Secretary General Seth Panyako says Sifuna is shielding the perpetrators of the abhorrent scam.
Mng'olewe kutoka chini mpaka juu, mwene na ufisadi. Nyinyi mnafikiri vyama vimekuwa mali yenu ya binafsi, mnaweka ndani ya mifuko ili mtumie kufanya ufisadi. Wewe Sifuna, wacha nikuambie, mikono yako imechafuka. Mikono yako umetia ndani ya pit latrine, inanuka. Hapana kuja kusema kwamba kuna ufisadi. Wewe ni DCI, wewe DCIO, wewe ni EACC, wewe ni police, wewe ni Transparency International.
The duo are accusing ODM of relentlessly trying to divert the attention of Kenyans and national donors by dragging the name of the deputy president into the scam. KEMSA CEO and two other directors were suspended last week to allow investigation on alleged dubious tendering for procurement of PPEs essential for fight against COVID-19. WHO has already withdrawn its funding for Kenya's COVID-19 program. Mulindi Kerry, TV47 in the county of Kakamega.
That very one will be part of the stories that will be forming the basis of our conversation this morning. To later on, we expound some more on it. There may be no Senate Kamkunji today or special sitting tomorrow, that is Tuesday, on the proposed revenue formula as was expected. The 12-member committee is set to meet the CRA and Treasury tomorrow to strike, that is today, to strike a deal on the stalemate. Now, the committee is seeking a reprieve for counties likely to lose in the proposed third-generation revenue sharing formula. The 12-member committee was expected to table a report this week after days of deliberations on the matter.
After days of lengthy meetings in an attempt to reach a consensus on the proposed third-generation sharing formula that has starred division in the Senate, the wait for that consensus could be longer. The 12-member bipartisan committee is now expected to meet the CRA and National Treasury Monday for further talks on the protracted stalemate. Religious leaders now insisting that the Senate should be transparent and swift in making a decision.
Waje kutuhangaisha wakati kauli haraka, waje kutuhangaisha na wanatuhangaisha kwa sababu kila mtu anaangalia, anataka kujua ikienda hivi mimi nitapata ngapi, ikienda hivi nitapata ngapi. Kwa hiyo inakuwa tu ni mbinu zao. Sasa tutaongozwa na watu ambao wana mbinu za wizi miaka ngapi? Si lazima tufike mahali tuseme watelea mbali, wacha tuinuke tuone kama tunaweza kuleta mabadiliko.
Kangundo Member of Parliament Fabian Kule noting that a lot of activities have stalled in the counties and thus the need for the Senate to solve the stalemate as soon as possible.
Shida iko kwa delimitation of our county government. Mkiona vile county government Kenya tuligawanyisha kikabila. Kaunti kama Lamu iko na watu 150,000, ni kama hii Matungulu constituency. Ukiangalia kaunti ya Tana River ni watu 300. Kaunti ya Kiambu iko na 200 million. Munafaa kuangalia border kwanza before you think about CRA. Kwa hivyo nasema muende mconsult IBC, muangalie border isikuje vizuri, ndio tugawane pesa vizuri.
On Friday, President Uhuru Kenyatta urged the senators to reach a consensus on the proposed formula by CRA, seeking for its implementation, with his deputy William Ruto seeming to take a different stand, saying that it's important for populous counties to get additional resources, but marginalized counties should not register big losses.
And now, Deputy President William Ruto has praised Jubilee members of Parliament, who he says have stood firm despite threats, blackmail and intimidations to defend the party's development agenda. Now, the DP says some leaders were keen to divide the party and frustrate its unity and development of a purpose for the country so as to achieve their selfish ends ahead now of 2022 elections. Addressing grassroots leaders from 13 counties drawn from the Kikuyu community at his Sugoi home after Sunday service, the Deputy President noted that some leaders were doing everything possible to hijack the Jubilee agenda for Kenyans. Leaders present Susan Kihika, Kimani Ngunjiri, Susan Kihika, Kimani Ngunjiri and Caleb Kositani, who drummed support for Ruto's 2022 presidential bid.
Yakwe umba yode nowe oeaga kwende muno nango yuage
na wewe. Vitisho imekuwa mingi Kenya hii. Wewe ukionekana namna hii utapelekwa kwa DCI. Wewe ukifanya hii utapelekwa kwa sijui EACC. Ukiwa salamia fulani unawekewa kesi. So watu wengine wanaingiza uoga ndani huko. Na ndio nilikuwa nawakumbusha maneno ya Biblia iko Ufunuo 21 mstari wa 8 ambayo inasema waongo. Waongo kwanza, wazinzi, wanaoabudu sanamu, alafu na waoga hawaendi mbinguni. Sasa ukikubali kuwekwa uoga Kenya ya saa hii, utakosa ya dunia na utakosa ufalme wa mbinguni. So watu wajihadhari sana, na nawashukuru sana viongozi hawa. Najua wameambiwa mambo mingi, lakini wamesimama na ukweli na wamesimama na imani kwamba tunamwabudu Mungu aliye hai.
All right, and on that very note, I think it's important that we lock that session of taking a look at the stories of the day as we prepare to cross over to the newspaper segment. We have the People Daily, the Standard newspaper, and the Daily Nation. After this break, we'll be coming back, and we're expecting to have Jonathan Muhomba, who's an urban developer, to join us and expound some more on his take on what will be on the newspaper. So after this break, we'll be right back. we have the Standard newspaper, and we also have the Daily Nation. Good morning, Jonathan. Good to have you. We start off with the front page of the People Daily, the biggest story. That is on the front page, making of a super alliance, and faces of key political leaders from different regions captured right there. Right Honorable Raila Odinga, Gideon Moi, Kalonzo Musyoka, Hassan Joho, Mohisa Kitui, Peter Kenneth. We're taking a look at a scenario where we have Nyanza, we have Rift Valley, we have Ukambani region, we have, of course, that is Mount Kenya region, but in this case, then, of course, Meru, the likes of the northeastern, and we're talking about central Kenya, and we're talking about the coast and western Kenya. This amid the political realignments that we've been seeing of late as we focus on 2022. And Matrix, Raila proposed as one-term president and Kenneth as a prime minister in line-up that seeks to have kingpins from all regions of the country. Interesting conversation here in matters of politics taking center stage. Page 6, extensively expounds on this report. I don't know what you make of this.
Well, it's an interesting time, and this phase Kenyan politics, whereby we have signings. I'll compare it to like managing a football team. This is the opportunity whereby the leaders of both teams can sit down and sign new players. Though this started much earlier before, as we had Raila switching from opposition to the government, but an awkward position that is. What I could say about this new alliance is in the offing, because it's clear. It's so clear. They say that some things are too clear to be seen. There is a possibility of the new alliance, but we are not so sure about it. After all, we know it's politics, and only time will tell.
All right, and indeed, like you say, only time will tell. But one thing is for sure, there's going to be lots of changes on matters politics in the country. Another story captured right here, Zamba Gitonga, after 10 years, constitution is ripe for changes. We know very well that we are almost marking the promulgation of the new constitution, or maybe the current constitution that we have. And the conversation on ground is that, yes, we acknowledge the fact that constitutions are dynamic, not static at all. So in this case, there is that need to constantly, review the constitution if at all it does not address the issues that affect the common mwananchi. And captured on page 4 and 5 in this new series, marking a decade of the supreme law, the chair of the team that put together the 2010 document highlights some of the areas that require review. We all acknowledge that for the longest of time we've been trying to note some of the loopholes that are within the constitution. And as what the president has said, it is necessary that we look into that need of ensuring that we seal the loopholes that are within the constitution. So captured on page 4 and 5, like I said, on the People Daily, expounding and reminding us of the fact that, yes, we are 10 years into it. What way forward? What do you make of this, and what it is that the constitution has done for us so far, and whether you confirm or affirm, or you think otherwise, that maybe there is no need of proceeding to make changes on the constitution?
I would like to differ with that statement, because if we were to make changes in the constitution, that would only be because we've tried to implement it. But as we heard what the Chief Justice said yesterday, is that this is one of the best constitutions that we have. The Kenyan Constitution is actually one of the best constitutions in the world. Mm-hmm. The only problem is that we are not implementing the constitution. And there is a culture of impunity, starting from the top of the president himself is not obeying court orders. So I would say, instead of talking about, let's edit this constitution, let's do this, let's do that, it would be much better for us to try and implement it fully, so that we can know if it's really working or not working. Because as of now, I do not think the constitution is fully implemented, and we are yet to see of this constitution.
All right, we wait to see that, but also, as many would acknowledge, maybe there's need for some changes, and we'll be expounding more on that conversation later on the broadcast. Also, another story that is captured on the People's Daily and expounded some more on page 9. Uproar over billions lost in COVID-19 tenders. This even as the numbers that we have right now on matters COVID-19 have been projected right here. 32,364 is the total number of cases that we have. 18,617 have recovered so far. 548 deaths have been registered. This is out of samples that have been tested. A number standing at 421,983 in the country extensively. As of yesterday, 246 people were recorded positive. That is from the last 24 hours before the address. I do not know what you make of the talks of corruption right here in the country. And as always, politics will always creep in. It's pretty much unfortunate, but that is a conversation that is ongoing, with different quarters pointing fingers at different people. What do you make of it?
About corruption, it has gotten to a point that headlines reading that, we've lost a certain amount of money, amounting to billions, it's no longer news anymore. Only that this time they've decided to steal from the sick, the weak and the old. It's a move that the WHO has termed to equate to murder. Mm-hmm. I think it's a culture that we are not proud of as Kenyans. Our leaders have opted to always serve themselves from their public coffers, which is terribly wrong, and we hope that one day these people will be accountable for their actions and maybe even have a few convictions, serious convictions of these corruption cases. What
do you suppose could be altering this? Because this is not the first time that we're having a case of corruption. There are numerous ones, backlog of cases that have not been addressed. Why do you suppose we're here up until today?
I'd say it's a culture. People call it bad manners, whereby we know very well who's corrupt, who's not corrupt, but people tend to lean towards the way to something that we're hoping will change with time. And even implementation of the Constitution itself, Chapter 6 about integrity, leadership and integrity. Nobody's ever taken it serious. We haven't seen somebody who's been told, oh, you're bad from holding a public office because of this and that. What you find is that the allegations of corruption in a certain office, the only thing that happens is that the holders of those offices are transferred to hold some other offices, which basically means it's just transferring corruption to other offices, and a lot of politics about it. We've actually been shocked about the sentiments made by the Secretary General of ODM, Mr. Edwin Sifuna. It has really evoked a lot of emotions. It clearly shows that we have a long way to go, but hopefully, as I said before, the implementation of the Constitution will bring an end to this. If these people were bad from the first step, like from running an election, let alone even holding public office, I think that's the first step in taming corruption.
All right. Well, that aside, also we'll be expounding some more on it. Still on the front page of the People Daily. And it's back to normal for churchgoers, I think, amid the easing of the restrictions that were put on board. Well, the numbers were still not so much, of course, in most of the churches taking a spot check of the same, captured on page 2. And also, as it says, church attendance low in spite of relaxed guidelines. Actually, most of the churches have opted to still conduct their activities at online or virtually, so probably that could have informed the reason why this is not happening. So church attendance is low in spite of these relaxed guidelines after they called upon the government and the Interfaith Council to relook into the restrictions that they had put on board. So most places of worship had slowly resumed operations. A section of the religious fraternity kept away, but we can only see and wait to see whether indeed this is going to be adjusted as time goes by. But that aside, there's a story that has been captured here. Consensus reached senators to support Linturi revenue deal. There's still some ish on how this is going to be dealt with, on whether indeed we're going to get a truce and whether this team is going to be able to bring us a sanity. Remember, there was the conversation supposed to be held this week, so people are able to know, or the counties are able to know what way forward. But as it is, there's still some hiccups, but all the same, we can only wait to see what will happen in regards to the same. What do you make of the stalemate, revenue stalemate? It's a conversation that we've had for the longest of time. I'd love to hear your review or your take on the same, the fact that right now counties are struggling to survive amid this stalemate.
Okay, about I call it the drama in the upper house, the drama in the Senate. I think it's basically a difference of personalities, individuals, not even matters of national interest. It's just a case of who is heavier than who has a lot of influence, who is this, who is that. Especially after what happened, the changes that were made by the ruling party. This is why I say it. This is why I say this. When you look at the amount that is the contentious amount, the 318 billion shillings that has brought all these troubles, that's a drop. It's a drop in the ocean when you compare that to the total budget of the financial year 2021, which is at 3-point-something trillion shillings. It's almost a tenth of the whole cake. That is, you find that the whole country is fighting for 10%, yet the Constitution says that it should be 45%. I think the discussion that these gentlemen and ladies should be having in the Senate is how to increase that amount from 300 billion to maybe, let's say, close to 1 trillion. That would be almost a third, though not exactly where the Constitution had suggested. Then I think when that is implemented, then we'll see the real changes, the real changes.
All right. Okay. Well, that aside, Lawless Kilimani and guns in wrong hands. This is a story that has been expounded on page 7 and also takes us to the Standard newspaper, where the same story makes it on the front page. Is it on the front page? Yes. And also that should be on page 2 of the Standard newspaper. That is recent killing, page 3, sorry. I don't know why it's buffering, but yes, recent killings, in different parts of the city, and mostly, of course, in this part of Kilimani, and, reports coming on board of what could have informed that. Just why is it that we have these killings, these murder cases? And sadly enough, or sad to speak, is that, it's hard to get answers. There is no justice that is served, especially for the people who've been slain. There's no justice for the families of these people who've lost their loved ones. The cases continue to be mysterious by the day.
About the death of Kevin, may his soul rest in peace. I think it's a bigger issue than just it's some sort of complicated crime. I wouldn't call it an organization. I think it's just some criminal activity that is happening, mostly involving young men, people between the age of...
They've been very common. That's my biggest fear and worry, and that's my biggest question. They've been very common. Why?
It's the culture of get rich or die trying. Quick money. I think that's the biggest problem. And you find these young people, most of them very, very young. Like the case of Kevin. Kevin used to work for some auto bazaar. Then all of a sudden he's now driving a vehicle worth 14-15 million shillings with no clear explanation of how he made that money. That is the false lifestyle that most people are chasing after, which comes with a very high price. And also the issue of legal firearms, small firearms in this country legally, say guns, pistols. It's the same case about the shooting that happened at B Club earlier this year. I'd say all this.
Well, hi guys, how are you doing today? Today the setup is a bit different.
All right.
As you can see.
Sorry, this one. Yeah. Okay. Well,
Yeah, so-
yeah.
I'd say it's a bigger problem than it looks. First of all, people call them mostly they could be wash. That's the name that people use. Just making money using the wrong means, which usually ends up in sour deals that cost people lives and property. And it's that culture. It's the culture that's the problem. Culture of as long as you have money, we do not care where you got your money. We love money and we respect you for the money that you have. Yeah.
All right. And yes, it's pretty much unfortunate, but what's important is that we can hope for justice to be served for the people who have lost their lives and their families. And still on the front page of the Standard newspaper, well, on matters politics, as we talk politics, Ida Odinga hits 70. It's been tough, but the principles brought me thus far. Her story captured on page 4 extensively. But to take a look at what is on the front page, war erupts over COVID-19 funds. And I think we've touched on that extensively. We'll also be expounding more on it later on the broadcast. And to different story, community learning, teachers assured of their pay, and the community-based learning has been introduced, and in what is termed to be something that will take full force in September. You know, lots of confusion still revolve around this conversation. And the argument on ground is that, well, we were not able to successfully hack the online learning or the digital learning. What makes us imagine or even think that we'll be able to talk about community-based learning successfully amid all these discrepancies, amid all these differences, and, you know, even the nitty-gritty details. And the argument is that probably these people do not understand the reality on the ground. And just how then will this help us be able to limit the spread of COVID-19 and protect our children?
Community learning. I think it is a great idea. Only that there are very many challenges, starting from the projects by the government that we are going to give every class 1 student a laptop. If only that happened, this is 8 years into this government. Each and every primary going school kid could be able to participate in the online classes. And I think this pandemic came to expose so many flaws in our education system, whereby if the school closed, learning stops. No, I don't think that should be the case, and we should have some creative ways of educating our kids when they're at home. I think the education experts can draft a way of making sure that the students are not idle, and the teachers as well.
All right. Well, that aside, as we all wait to see what will happen, let's cross over to the Daily Nation and Uhuru's firm grip on power in COVID-19 season. And since the virus struck, President Uhuru Kenyatta has made major strides in taming a political march of his deputy. And with talk of a reshuffle once a cabinet returns from recess, the pandemic could be a blessing in a storm, captured on page 4. I do not know what you make of course, the activities of the government, even as it stands. The other day, conversations on the board coming as to, trying to paint a picture that there are likelihoods that their leaders or the politicians would want, an extra year to cover up for, what is 2020, a year that has been termed as a lost year, that has gone to shambles. And maybe there's probably that need for them to be able to get an extra year so they can, achieve what it is that they would have achieved in 2020. President Uhuru Kenyatta's move to send a cabinet, on leave or on recess, then many people looked at it as though, it was a strategy to go again and pull that reshuffle. Do you suppose it's going to be the case? Do you suppose then there's need of a reshuffle? Or maybe it was necessary that they go for that break and come back revamped and energetic enough to address the issues?
Of course, the issue of a reshuffle, it was there, it was looming, and it's still coming, though nobody is sure of when. The only question is how, and who are going to remain in the president's in the cabinet. I'd say this is long overdue, since we've had this push and pull in the ruling party, which basically, if the president had the firm grip on power, he should have been decisive from day one and brought about all these changes. These issues have been persistent for more than a whole year. Everybody has been talking, there's a cabinet reshuffle looming, cabinet reshuffle. And right now, there is very little time to be done, very little time that Uhuru has before the end of his term, which also brings the other issue of them imagining that they can add one extra year to their term because this corona thing. They say that never let a good crisis go to waste in politics. The president has really maximized on this COVID thing. Immediately, he had the opportunity to ban public gatherings. He did that so as to tame his political rivals, who are changing the tide of his support from his strongholds and all across the country. I'd say it was a good opportunity for him. So he's doing that. There's nothing much going on in the political scene. In my eyes, if you ask me what the president is doing, there isn't much. He's handling this politics issue with kid gloves. He's touching here, touching there. He hasn't really made a decisive move apart from the changes in the House leadership. And about adding one more year, I don't think it will make any changes in his legacy per se. It's just politics.
All right, Jonathan, thank you so much for your insights. We cross over and expand some more on that on the current affairs segment. We have Kiambu Town member of, that is MCA, yes, member of County Assembly, and we'll also be having Betty Adera joining us, so indeed it's going to be an interesting conversation right here. So keep it right here as we cross over for that session after this particular break. That will be on the political events of the weekend after this break. welcome back to the broadcast. It is time for the session where we talk weekend politics and we take a look at the events of what took center stage over the weekend on matters politics. Joining me this morning, Honorable Anthony Ikonya, that is the MCA Kiambu Township, who's going to join us this morning. That is Kiambu Township Ward, Member of County Assembly Kiambu Township. And also we'll have Julius Owino, who's a political strategist, commonly known as Maji, to expound some more on what they think of the events of the weekend. Gentlemen, good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for finding time to be with us.
Thank you.
Yes, and I have the newspapers. Of course, we've already gone through the newspapers, but they capture hugely what has taken center stage over the weekend on matters politics. Before we even delve into that, there's one story that is on the front page of the Daily Nation on Uhuru's firm grip on power in COVID-19 season and the likelihoods of a change of cabinet to address the issues that affect us and to ensure that he streamlines the activities even as he seeks to leave a legacy. Before we even delve into what has happened over the weekends, that proposal to proceed and award his cabinet ministers or his ministers, the cabinet secretaries, to proceed and go for a break. That started last week on Monday. 11 days into it, we'd be expecting to probably witness changes. Do you suppose then that the government or the president should proceed and make changes and have a cabinet reshuffle? Or maybe we should go by what it is that they said, that they have confidence, full confidence on the cabinet that is there and it stands. Gentlemen, probably to start with you, Maji.
Good morning once again.
Morning.
I support the president's intention to change his cabinet. And I support it fully because a while back there were names that were floated that would be involved in trying to get the country in order. And one of the names I heard were like Mukisa Kitui. And the names I read were also, I can tell they are aligned to Vision 2030, one of the people who drafted Vision 2030. So I have full confidence that he does not only want to change people, but he wants to get the best people because I tend to think and I want to believe we are at a crisis level where you need very experienced people, you need a strong spine and a backbone to have a turnaround. So I support the cabinet change, not because the current ones we have are bad, but we can do better.
Mheshimiwa, is there time? Oh, sorry, allow me to cut you short and ask Mheshimiwa whether he feels like there is time for, changes in the cabinet and to be able also to achieve so much in terms of development.
No, thank you very much for having me. Must say a few things. One, the president is in charge of, this is his government. So any change that would come from him, nobody will come on his way. And when you're working, you look for the best people to work around with. So I think if he does any change, I think that will be good for him and his government. Again, with his big four agenda, so he's looking for people who come along and try and help him and achieve his dream. All the same, I must say that we are 2 years into the general election, and to me, again, as you've asked, it becomes a little bit difficult when it comes in late in the day to adapt and to know what transpires within that department. So before you start delivering, then you find that time has lapsed and you will not be able to quite do much. Unless, as Maji says, you bring in people with a lot of experience, like the likes of Mukisa Kitui, who do not need a lot of time to adapt and to get into the system. That will come in handy when you get in and bring in some good people. So, but it's his cabinet, this is his government, so he can do as he wills in terms of getting people who will deliver in his dream. The worst that would happen is that if he brings along people who he thinks in his succession plan, or rather in the government that he wills that will take the day, he brings in people who will now start getting ready for another government. If he plays politics with it, as opposed to bringing in people who will help him deliver on his promise, I think that would be wrong. But I wish he comes along, he brings along people, because we can see there are so many ministries and departments that are not doing well, so that needs to be revamped and needs some to be re-energized.
For example, would we get examples of these ministries that you're talking about?
I've looked for a long time at the Agriculture Department. It is a person who will come and, that's the backbone of this country. We had the likes of Wanji Kinturi, who never delivered in that department. Right now, I still think it's not doing very well. Minister of Industrialization. I think we need people with a new touch and who can revamp those departments and those ministries. So I think that there are ministries that we see that are not doing really well, that needs some bit of touch and being revamped.
Speaking of which, now we mentioned Muhisa Kitui, and I think that introduces us to the politics of the weekend. And from what also has been captured on the People Daily, the front page, there seems to be some political realignments that are, purpose towards making of a super alliance that is going to address, of course, or maybe incorporate almost all regions in the country to create that balance. And in what has been captured on the front page of the People Daily, and is what actually has informed the political events of the weekend, some realignments, some leaders meeting up, raising questions as to what exactly it is that the meetups are all about. And Muhisa Kitui finds his face or his space on this particular talk of a possible realignment or a possible super alliance that will incorporate Baba, that is Right Honorable Raila Odinga, Muhisa Kitui himself, Gideon Moi, Kalonzo Musyoka, Peter Munya, Peter Kenneth, and Hassan Joho, just painting a picture of technically the key regions, or almost all the regions, incorporated in this, or a majority of the regions being incorporated on this. What really is being cooked, or so to speak, Majimaji, what do you suppose? Because we've seen this, we've seen the events of, the meetups of Murathe, the talks of, Francis Atwoli, and people really seem to want to read so much into this.
I would say, first of all, there is need for a Kenyan growth. There is need for a national face. There is need for a national outlook. There is need for all regions to feel they are part of the cake. So in that approach, there is need to have experienced people aspiring, people with a back in that level of leadership, especially now. So on that, I'll give it up to us. Now, if I go back in history, this reminds me of the period 2002-2007. Reminds me of the Kibaki government that really performed well. So when you have good people, and there are three things that matter in any stable nation. Number one, politics. We must have stable politics. Number two, we must look at the economy. Number three, we must look at our agriculture. So we are trying, I think they are now trying to get the political stability in all people who have a spine to manage the country's politics and also manage the country. Because whether you're a professional and you don't have political acumen, it will be difficult to implement or drive policies that are acceptable by the people. So political goodwill, political stability is the number one key, even before economy. It dictates the economy. So I'm welcoming the change, and I think it is informed by the need for stability now and then, because again, you see there are proposals that probably before 2022, if BBI goes, that realignments will be done before, not after. So we have to realize those realignments now that can get you into government, because after that, there'll be no realignment. This is possibly to avert any situation of conflict. So it's important to have the best plans possible. And if you can choose it from amongst good men and women, spread throughout the country so that we have a national face, I do support that.
All right, and in such of an elevated...
In the interest of political stability, maturity, and spines that can manage people.
Well, in such of an elevated aspect of democracy, political stability, like you say, Majimaji, would want to ask Honorable Anthony, do you suppose then, from the realignments that we witnessed today, from the changes that are being projected today, from the talk of change on the Constitution? By the way, we are marking about 10 years of the Constitution, the current Constitution, since it was promulgated. Do you suppose then that these realignments that we see today are likely to take us to that level where we're going to get political stability, or it's going to worsen the situation?
No, I think you look at it in quite a number of aspects. One, I quite agree with what Majimaji says, that we've got into a point where we need to have a government that has a national outlook. You can now pick from the entire country. So it's really important that we look at how we can widen the top and see how we can have a number of seats that can be occupied by what we call a national outlook, so to say. So, but I think we also need to look at the cost implication. But let me, before I get to that, say this, that it is not just good for we have two functions. We can't deny that in politics. Right now, we have the functions of Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga, the so-called the Kieleweke part and the Tangatanga part. And I think this will favor, I think when it comes to that proposal, I think everybody will want to have that proposal because last week I saw in the papers that what grapples now the deputy president as he tries to form the next government is, again, who does he come along with? Because as it is right now, you only need one deputy. So the question is, why do you pick your running mate from? So when you have a bigger, government and you have the prime minister, deputy prime ministers, so you can now be able to pick quite a number of people from different parts of the country, which makes you more stable and have a government that has a national outlook. But be that as it may, we also need to ask ourselves, what is the cost that comes with it? Because as it is right now, Kenyans are crying. We're in a very critical economic situation. Things are not really good. So one of the things maybe when we get to a referendum, that'll be very hard to convince Kenyans is the cost that comes with it. You will be paying a president, a deputy president, a prime minister, that kind of a thing. So I think to bring it down to the throats of Kenyans, there's going to be a challenge in terms of convincing them with this hard economic time. So we need to have a look. We need to get an approach that can be agreeable to Kenyans. Yes, we will have a lot of us in government and we'll have a national outlook, but what is the cost that comes with it? That's something, again, we also need to look at.
I want to differ.
Proceed, Majimaji.
I want to say this advisory to any government in the world.
Yeah.
Get your political stability right. The rest will fall into place. Number one thing any country must think of, and any head of state who wants to manage a proper economy, get your political stability right.
That really, Majimaji, has been attributed to be key of the numerous failures that we witness as a country. Do you suppose that the political lot and the leadership that we have today, has that interest of getting the political act together so that at least we are able to have, a prosperous country in terms of development and all that? And are there likelihoods that there could be the hands of, an external hand that probably does not allow the leadership that is there at hand to get it all right?
Because there is goodwill. There is goodwill already. With the handshake, there's goodwill of people wanting to work. There's goodwill. So it is up to the president to harness from that goodwill. And I'll repeat again, political stability is number one. However expensive it is, get it. Because once you get it, economy will come in number two. Once you have an economy, you need to look at the environment. Those are the three factors any country needs for growth. Political stability, number one priority.
Just how much can we bank on the handshake, Honorable Anthony? Just how much can we bank on the handshake based on what Majimaji says? That, there is that political goodwill based on what we've seen coming with the handshake. But we also have seen leaders who've castigated the handshake. We've seen Deputy President William Ruto over the weekend pointing the fingers at the handshake,
But I think I quite disagree with Majimaji. We had a shadow of what you're talking about. We remember we had President Mwai Kibaki and Prime Minister. Yes. We had a shadow of what you're talking about. Actually, that on 3 years under the bus. So political stability, fine, I quite agree. But you see, who you bring on board and the setup that you have, again, we will count. Because we've had that before, it didn't work for Kenyans. So that is a question that Kenyans will be asking themselves. To me, the handshake, I think that is where our problem started, if you ask me. To me, I hold a different view from what Majimaji is saying. Because we formed a government that was voted in by the people of Kenya, and they had two options. They had the function of Raila Amolo Odinga, they had the function of Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, but they decided to go for Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta and William Samoei Ruto and his people. A few years down the line comes what you call the handshake, which has never been explained to date. And proper explanation to that has never been given. Yeah. Look at where it has left the deputy president. A deputy president that the people of Kenya went and voted for. I quite agree. It's important to bring everyone on board. Mm-hmm. But again, we must know, why did we bring a government in place? What was it supposed to do? Because the reason why Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta castigated Raila Amolo Odinga during the campaign and said some very bitter things, and then brings him on board for some reasons that we don't know, and leaves a person that he fought with, the likes of the deputy president, and see what we've seen in the recent past. What has happened in Jubilee, what has happened in the leadership of the assemblies and what have you, has left this country more torn, as opposed to what you'd call it has not brought us together, as opposed to what you'd call. There is no unity that we can attribute to it. Actually, it has left this place much worse.
Well, many would argue that there's been tranquility after the tough times, when of course the opposition was probably always out there on the streets, and at least upon that handshake, things changed and we could see people go back to business.
But let me tell you something. There is a constitution in this country. You see, where we have peace in this world, the countries that there is a lot of peace. It's not because, we have to get a culture and we have a constitution. If you lose an election, you must accept. That is where it should begin. Because we will have many more elections. What will happen if we have people who do not accept results? Do we keep absorbing them in government? Well, we have a constitution.
Do you suppose then that probably because we are not genuinely doing this, we do not see leaders consent after they've lost the elections? Do you suppose we should go the Tanzania way, where upon that declaration that this is the president, no more going to court to contest that probably you lost it or everything maji?
I would like to differ with him again. There's something you call unilateral decisions.
Okay.
Our president made a unilateral decision. He knew there are people who will not be happy. But this versus the entire nation being happy, what should I lose? Should I lose half
Wait a minute, Maji. Do you suppose the entire nation is happy when you look at this scenario where there's that talk that maybe we do not have an opposition that is supposed to put the government check? Much as the opposition say that equally the government should have, people within themselves that can keep the government check. And
I will revert again.
Right.
Number one priority of any head of state who wants to be successful is political stability. Okay. Pay any price for that. So, atakuileta mtaa. You have 7 children.
Yeah.
You're facing a divorce. You're the head of the family. You have a chance of securing no divorce, and the family stays together.
And you remain unhappy.
And you have a chance of thinking about yourself and divorcing and separating the family and the 7 children.
Yeah.
What decision would you make?
Tricky one there.
That is the handshake.
Yeah. All right. Yes,
friends of your wife who told her to leave, friends of your husband who told her your wife is a bad person. But how about these 7 children? They will be the happiest. So sometimes you can afford that pain in the interest of stability, because without stability, there'll be no economy to talk about.
Just how much can we enjoy the handshake without reading malice, without reading, so much into it? First, there's been conversation that maybe, yes, the opposition has remained silent. I think the latest that we have been treated to is what we see today on the KEMSA corruption. And what is making headlines is that conversation or that declaration by Secretary General for ODM declaring that, or calling upon, of course, the necessary stakeholders to wait until there is an audit report from the Auditor General. In what many have looked at as a way of sanitizing this process, or a way of trying to be hypocritical in addressing the corrupt cases that crop up as to, the monies that have been channeled towards dealing with COVID-19. So when you look at such scenarios, and you probably think that if there was no handshake, if there was this agreement, then maybe we would have been having a different conversation in the country.
Now that is...
Mheshimiwa, you want to come in? Let's allow Mheshimiwa come in, and then you...
Yes, because I quite agree. The opposition is now in government, and what they're doing is that they're now looking together. I mean, it's really unfortunate. Well, we ought to have an opposition that is pointing out at what the government is doing and castigating them at any time. They look at what happened over the weekend, the events of the weekend. We saw some bad days of Aida Odinga.
Mama Aida, yes. She clocked 70.
Yes. Look at the likes of Akina Waiguru. Those are the guests. You saw they were on a sanitization tour or spree, so for lack of a better word. So I think we've lost it. We ought to have an opposition that has the government in terms of what it does and looks. And
they say the DP is the opposition right now. He equally was in Eldoret holding some sessions.
He ought not to be the. He ought not to be the.
Who says Raila was the opposition chief?
All right.
No, I didn't say that. I said the position is he lost an election, so he ought to be on the other side. Actually, the person is now being seen to be in the opposition is the deputy president voted in by the people of Kenya. I think that is wrong, you know. So this form of settings I find no basis on any constitution or any law. So I think we have the opposition and the government together, stealing together, and look at what Sifuna said. Honestly, to be very honest, this is something that we all saw, we all know. So instead of telling the president to go forward and maybe form a commission of inquiry or do all those things, they're now joining in, and it seems like they've looted together.
Are we judging Sifuna harshly, knowing very well that yes, there are processes, that should be followed towards addressing the aspect of graft? And I mean, report from the Attorney General is key. If at all you have to incriminate
those processes.
Because this is media.
All right.
Allow me first to talk about corruption from a legal perspective before I get to the political perspective. Because politics is a currency and a selfish currency. So when I want to talk about the legal aspect, the CJ said something, Chief Justice, about it. Give me proper paperwork in a case. We will beat corruption.
All right.
The ICJ, the ICJ, International Commission of Jurists, they also say they can see gaps in transparency. Those gaps need to be filled so that we file the corruption issue. Now, when I come to what Sifuna said, Sifuna did not talk on behalf of Raila, on behalf of ODM. I think he spoke like Sifuna and like a lawyer.
Do you think so?
I need an audit report, or people need an audit report, because if you want to fight it properly, you need that paperwork. Otherwise, you'll go to court, you'll be asked for things you cannot prove.
The pressure is put on Baba.
That is not to say there is no corruption. And when we talk about corruption, I would like my friends so that we come from the way back. 2018 Transparency Perception Report Index puts Kenya at 144 out of 180 corruption index. Now, just 2018 alone, the most recent ones, alleged NHIF, alleged the dams report in billions. So many other reports were alleged. Let us go back and accumulate all and talk about corruption really. But let's get to the politics of corruption. If I'm aspiring, it is good for me to say the incumbent is corrupt, so that I can use the political currency. But the perception that COVID money has not been spent wisely or properly is a perception that could be real, but I have not seen proof. And it's something I condemn totally, because it's close to murder. If the medical personnel will not have PPEs, if the medical personnel will not have salaries, if there will be no money to buy medicine, we are simply adding death in Kenya. Not only about COVID, anybody who was in hospital for any other reason. So this should be looked at seriously. If the Global Fund can say they will stop funding and they would rather buy the medicine themselves and give Kenya, they are telling the world, do not trust Kenya. So this is gross, grievous, that when we want to allege it to someone, we must talk legally and say we are demanding this person be jailed and even murdered, as it was done in China, because this is gross. So I don't want to use media and say that guy is corrupt. Raila is supporting corruption because of the handshake. Raila probably is fighting from the inside.
Well, Mheshimiwa, come in and speak about this. Yes, World Health Organization equally declaring that, all these looters amount to murderers, actually. And yes, like Maji said, there are likelihoods that probably Baba is fighting from the inside, and we're going to see the results.
We are seeing results. There are changes. So let me there's BBI, and BBI in corruption proposes that whistleblowers be given 5%. There are solutions that are going to be put on constitution, if allowed. There are solutions that will help curb corruption. These are things that are happening. We should not be blind about it. But I also saw what Ruto tweeted, which is very okay.
Yeah.
That's our deputy president. He was concerned. The only problem that I had was him politicizing corruption.
Is the
Especially
politics that is playing on this one, Mheshimiwa?
Especially on COVID, politicizing COVID. Let me say, this is murder.
All right, let's hear what Mheshimiwa has to say.
Let me say this. Let me split it into two, as is done. One, we must accept that legally we have loopholes, and just like the CJ said over the weekend, that if the same case, the election case that was brought before him is brought again with that paperwork, with the evidence that was deduced, you still make the same decisions. We have a problem with our investigation departments and the DPP because they do not take. I've been to courts and I can tell you this, and this was alluded to by Justice. I don't remember who said that, but they said the problem we have is that we are not able to bring a watertight case before these judges. So you cannot expect them to again prosecute and take people to jails on some flimsy accusation and poor paperwork. And here where the corruption is nowadays is not even in courts. I would agree with the CJ. The corruption has now gone a little bit down to the investigating department. So if you're caught with a loot and you corrupt and that kind of thing, you need not to even see a judge. You only need to see the investigating officers, and those people are putting papers together, do some flimsy work. So by the time it gets to the judge, you're sure there's no case that can hold, and then you walk scot-free. That I agree with Majimaji to that extent. But let's look at the political bit of it. If you ask me today, to be very honest, if Raila Odinga was in the opposition, I can tell you for a fact that today he would have been in the streets.
He is the opposition.
Yes.
Honorable Anthony.
No, he's in government. You can't say he's in opposition. He's in government. I'm telling you today, him and his people, the likes of Akina Kalonzo. Mathemati, allow me to say this. We will give you an opportunity to respond to this. I'm telling you the fact.
Let's hear what Anthony has to say, and then we come back to you.
Let's go with you. Let's go and pick it. Raila
must not be the person who's okay. And I think you said that it doesn't have to be him alone. Okay, let's allow Anthony finish.
Let's go with you and pick it even now.
All right. Anthony, proceed. Let's listen into what Anthony has to say, and then we come to you, Majimaji.
Yes, I'm telling you, they would have been on the streets over this. You know, this is a massive loot, and you can hear that the international donors are saying we'll now be buying medicines for you. And I can tell you, they'll buy those medicines, will come and sell them and pocket the loot. And because there's no one watching, there's nobody castigating this. You know, all of us are in it together. We are all in government, so nobody's. So I will tell you, if Raila Odinga was on the other side today, he would have been on the streets. We'll be calling on shots on the government and telling them they're doing wrong. So the political bit of it is that we need a credible and proper opposition, both in the Senate, both in Parliament, both even out here. But today, because of what we're calling stability in government, we bring everyone on board and sideline others, like the deputy president who is now watching from the fence and talking and saying this is not right. But look at what, and don't tell us that Sifuna was not talking for Raila. We know, I mean, a politician, I can tell you, we have mouthpieces. When you want to say this, there is a person that you say this. But you know, when Orengo talks, you know it's Raila who is talking. When Murkomen talks, you know Ruto is talking. You know, so you can't tell us that Sifuna was not talking for Raila. I can tell you he has the blessings of Raila and is a mouthpiece. Let's
welcome the public to be part of this conversation. 0768095491. You can call in and tell us what you make of the conversations this morning. There's so much that we'd love to touch on, but it looks like Atta will not be able to expound more on the same. And now that we're talking about politicians speaking on behalf of others, Majimaji, coming to you, we've seen Murathe speak. We've seen, the likes of Atuoli speak. Well, we would have expected that Atuoli is speaking on behalf of Gideon Moi because he is a lifetime KANU member. But we've seen, the conversations that are a little bit contrary. And Murathe is in Jubilee. Atuoli is in KANU, but they all come out to front Baba. What does it speak about the realignments and the face of 2022 moving forward? And by the way, this conversation of course, the fact that there's need to proceed and add the members of parliament or the politicians an extra year because they feel like 2020 opportunity has been wasted with COVID-19. And the argument is that President Uhuru Kenyatta needs to oversee, the process of incorporating BBI and changing the constitution, hence the need to extend them. This is not constitutionally right. But then again, the conversation is coming or is crippling in. And as we know, our politicians will always be there and they will find ways of ensuring that this sees the light of day. Majimaji.
I am a leadership enthusiast. And I am a good leadership enthusiast. And I believe succession should be managed. So I think what is happening, they are trying within their power to manage a succession so that we ensure there is stability. Every country that does that has always ensured stability. So if we manage our succession, we are simply arriving towards political stability. If you have a situation where an unexpected eventuality happens, my friend, you will suffer political stability. And I've told you, I'll repeat again for this show, kila Mkenya ajue, political stability is your number one currency. So I think these gentlemen, these noble men, are trying to manage succession the best way they know how. And I'm not saying it should go their way. It might not go their way, but it is important for any leader. If I may ask you, if there's an organization, a company you're leading, do you want to surprise people tomorrow? This is your MD. And it would be better if the MD can come from within the organization so that you have a belief somebody can be promoted, someone you know, who knows the ropes, this happens this way. So I'm a believer on succession management. However, it might not go that way. Yeah, but any country needs to realize political succession and manage it properly, especially the executive. That one needs to be managed. Even families do that. From here, your son will do this. It's a culture everywhere. So I don't see anything strange with Kinamurade, the Atuolis, trying to do what they can do best to see how can we get the country moving on so that we have political stability for another 10 years or so. So, but it does not stop any other person who does not believe in that from going for his own ideals. He or she might just win. But for Uhuru Kenyatta, if I was his advisor, I would tell him, manage your succession. It's important to the country.
All right, so though not formally discussed, Mheshimiwa has come to you.
Let me just come in at that point and say, this is laughable. When the likes of Ruto again gets into the succession game, it's called politics. And they're castigated and told you're doing politics instead of working. But when Natwari and the likes get into this thing, nobody talks. The president doesn't talk. You see, Atwari represents the workers of this country. At a point where workers are really suffering, what is Atwari telling us about workers? At a point where so many of them have lost jobs, and he represents workers. But the only thing we're hearing him saying, let me tell you something. Let me advise my good friend Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. Let me tell you, you see the people he has on board. I will bring him bad books with the people because I'm the ground. I can tell you, the likes of Atwari ought to be talking about the plight of workers right now.
Anthony, hold it right there. Let's pick this phone call from Kajiado, actually, Atwali's home. Samuel, good morning.
Morning. For me, I want to say this.
Samuel? We're not able to hear Samuel from this side.
No.
Oh, Jambo. Wacha tusikie maoni yako. Ndio.
Lakini ile kunaona ndani sahihi na tangu kupanda so unaona mtu ana kwa sababu sio wenye wanakuja na wanajua wanapata faida kwa kuna faida kila ndio mambo ya
We're not able to hear Samuel very well. I hope we can fix that one and then we get back to him. But gentlemen, yes, coming back to you, Anthony, there's also feedback right here from Kamau Gatwechi, who's watching, says, Linda, I pray that those involved will be dealt with expeditiously. And I think this is on matters graft and also still so much feedback, coming on board. But yes, coming back to you, Anthony, as you continue speaking about, yes, the scenario here, of course, where, you find this gentleman trying to front preferred leaders.
Ideally, I'm saying the worst that can happen to you is that you have wrong people doing that for you. You see, for the president, I think he needs to walk the talk and say, when he talks, he says that we need to stop politicking and go out and work. And you see, when I hear people talk of the deputy president and say that the deputy president is not helping the president work and do that kind of thing, the Constitution is very clear. The person is supposed to assign duties to the deputy president is the president himself. And when the deputy president goes out there and speaks a bit of politics and that kind of thing, or even goes with local politicians and they talk politics, they're castigated and they're called all sorts of names and whatever. But you see,
let's pick this one also. I'm sorry. Let's just allow the public also weigh in. Ronald from Nairobi, and we're coming back to you, Anthony. Ronald, good morning.
Good morning to you, madam. I'm not Ronald from Nairobi. I'm from Eldoret.
You're from Eldoret?
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Karibu sana, and thank you for calling in.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. My point is, why is this politician saying that only Ruto is campaigning? But when you see about Muraze, Atoli, Nayuch in there, when they campaign, the president is not doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
And you have one graph. They're not saying anything about it. But these people are shifting blames on each other. If they can say something about it, I think we can move forward very fast.
Thank you so much. And coming back to you, Anthony, before we get to Majimaji, I think you're supposed to also answer that now that you're also firing shots at the president. Is he hypocritical in nature when he is addressing some of the issues in the country?
No, what I said is I quite appreciate what the president is doing. He's doing an awesome job. I quite agree. He's doing an awesome job. We saw him over the weekend give out titles, and I quite agree. Yeah. But I'm saying we need to be very fair to everyone. If it's politics, if we need to tell people to stop politics, let's do it across board. Let's tell everybody, not just a function. So I want to believe that what you should be saying, Aturi and the likes of Peter Kenneth and all of you, if they want to help the president, is to come and condemn some of these things that we're saying in government. They should be advising him on how he needs to deliver on his big four. We no longer hear of the big four nowadays. And the only thing we hear nowadays, I think we have big two, called the handshake and BBI. We need to get back to the big four, and we need to work for this country. And they should come on board and bring in ideas, not political formations that are not helping us at this point in time. I mean, that's my take.
Mm-hmm. All right, and coming to you, Majimaji, I think this is a question I had asked earlier on, and I think I'll maintain the question, ranging, we've seen what COVID-19 has done to us, of course, slowing down the momentum of BBI, slowing down the activities, in parliament, in government, across all different sectors. And though it's not formally discussed, we've had conversations over the weekend that there are likelihoods that members of parliament will suggest to be topped up, and added 1 year so that they're able to, execute the mandate that they would have executed at this period when COVID has happened. I mean, how hypocritical in nature would that be? Or how necessary will it be to just try and make amendments and see that this sails through, so at least they're able to address the issues that they were not able to address at this time when COVID has ravaged?
I'll repeat again, corruption is evil. And now, especially this one, COVID, during a pandemic, that is gross. Yeah. And I would kindly ask the president to step on anybody so that they can give him proper information that he can act on. It is gross, it is murder. For Global Fund to indicate they don't trust Kenya, that is worse when you're trying to build an economy. So on that corruption, especially here, COVID, I would tell him to really step on. And I would ask, as opposed to my friend, I'm demanding that the government outlines in the newspaper how they possibly spent that money. And I want to say, at this moment, it is alleged. Now, back to if we should extend 1 more year to 2023 or something, I would say it is not necessary. Mm-hmm. And I can do citations. Tanzania across board is going for an election. There's COVID. World superpower America is preparing for an election in 2 months or so, 1.5 months. There is COVID and there's mass death. So COVID should not stop an election. We are anxious to get the country on course, and we can only do it through our vote as ordinary citizens. So they should allow us to go through that process and vote and put people in government that we feel can best take the country forward. In what he's trying to do as a head of state, I have no problem. There's something called, when my friend is talking about Atuoli, the Watch, those old guys, I'm sure there's some who the president is meeting that they don't see. There's something called in a community of society called the noble man. Now, in that case, I want him not to see Atuoli as a party chairman, as a noble person, someone with history, someone with experience who can tell you, if you do this and do this, this might be wrong. So I'm advising you as a noble man, this could be the way to go. There are so many noble men. I don't know where Moody Awori is. Maybe someone is consulting him. And I would just like to remind my friend, Moody Awori was a vice president. Do we a match? Was there stability? So stability of a nation also depends on your deputy. But I will not discuss deputy. I don't want to be in his shoes. What he's going for is quite big, and he has the right to do so. He has every right to go to lead the country, and I'm sure he can.
And I think those are the questions that people have been asking the deputy president. How can you decry over deep state? How can you decry of the government not doing well? Yet you're part and parcel of this government.
I don't call it deep state. I don't call it deep state. As a leadership enthusiast, I call it noble men and women. There are other women probably the president is consulting. I call them noble men and women. People who can tell you, well, ukienda namna hii, when you're going for a career.
Just how noble are they, and how much of interest do they have for the common Mwananchi?
Of course, they have the interest of the common Mwananchi. The number one interest is political stability. The number one currency of any head of state, even in an organization there's politics, achieve political stability. Then the rest will fall into place. I normally see a person I respect very much, Mudavadi, who's also a presidential hopeful, and he has the material. He pushes the economic currency very well. However, I would like to remind you, political stability is number one. Achieve it at any cost.
There's been talk that Mudavadi is being prepared by again.
Mazimaji has talked of political stability, quite a lot today. But I can tell you something. Political stability, the question you should ask yourself is, why do you want there to be political stability? Is it for the good of all of us? Is it that you can develop a country, or is it that you can create an environment for yourselves to amass as much as you can, to steal and loot and do all those things? The people are looking for stability so they can get an opportunity to steal and do all those things. I think we should be looking for political stability for the good of all of us. For the person who is in Turkana, in Kiambu, in Mombasa, we get a good atmosphere that will allow us to bring in methodologies of how we can do business, we can develop a country, we can do farming, we can do all those things. That is what I would call political stability. If we're looking, but you see, the political stability that is being sought by these people, of course, we all know, is to amass as much as they can. And these people, you're calling noble men, they are noble. What is it that we can harness from their nobleness? What has Otuoli done for this country? What has Murada done for this country? I think we need to ask ourselves, in as much as we call them noble. I quite agree with what you said about Moody Awori. He was a good person. But I must say this, all this is happening because we have the government and what is supposed to be the opposition sleeping in the same bed. So that is why they can even hatch an idea of we can extend for one more year, and which is crazy if you ask me. And I quite agree with him. We have Tanzania still with COVID, and the US, and they're still holding elections. So the very thought of that we should extend for another year, if the opposition was playing its role, they would have been out in the street saying, no, this can't happen because they are eagerly waiting to form a government. But they can all now agree so that they can use what they call the dictate and systems and what have you to make sure that they have proper combinations to ascend to power. So I think that is where it went wrong. I think that's why I am not a believer of the handshake. I quite agree with the peace aspect of it, that it brought people on board. But you see, they have gotten too much into government as opposed to what I would have thought. Because there was a government that was elected by the people of Kenya, we have a deputy president. They should be led to. We should let them work. And then
Musembi is asking, Mheshimiwa, Musembi is asking, are you pro Tangatanga? Are you pro the DP, or genuinely there's some discrepancies or there's some issues that are there?
I am just a Kenyan who look at things independently without. I have no political inclination, so to say. I just look at things objectively, and you know.
All right, let's pick this phone call, Mheshimiwa. Let's pick this phone call from Kisumu. Good morning. Good morning. How are you?
I'm fine.
Yes, let's get to hear your take on the conversation.
Let me talk to Mheshimiwa first. Mheshimiwa is talking about what has Atwoli done for the county. Let's compare. He's comparing Atwoli with Ruto. My question is again, what has Ruto done for the county?
Okay.
Because all we have seen is all about corruption and Rordam and everything. The scandals are all over the deputy president. But actually we've seen him fighting for the NHIS and also. So let's say Mheshimiwa tell us what are the things that the deputy president has done for the country that should be better. Thank you.
Well, you've heard the question, what has the DP done for the country? Much as you say, yes, it is the president who's supposed to give the duties to the DP, which he probably, according to you, has not done as expected. The question from the viewer then is, what has he done for the country anyway?
You know, when we take this conversation that way, we will. I will eliminate quite a lot, and this is not an issue of Atwoli versus Ruto. That's not where the conversation should be. The conversation should be: are we doing right for this country? And the decisions that we're making, are these foundations meant for the good of all of us? See, that's to me, that is very important. Or are we having political formations to give people positions so they can continue looting and being who is in this country and amassing as much as they can? You see, to me, that is key. That is key, and that's where the conversation should be.
All right.
So if you want to talk about looting,
yes,
let's be open to every case. Let's not put currency to the, although this one is gross, it's during a pandemic. If it is there, it is alleged. So there is mega dam scandal. There is alleged KPLC fraud. There is lands ministry, 20 billion. Those are recent. There are three governors out there. If you want to talk looting and corruption, my friend, open it. So then we talk about corruption legally, we separate it from politics. And if we want to talk about politics and corruption, because it is very and opportunistic use corruption as politics. But me, I don't want to go there. I'm not even an elected person. I will talk about corruption legally from the CJ perspective, from ICJ perspective. What are the loops? How can we ensure we have watertight cases? NYS has not been resolved. The sports has not been resolved. This one will be resolved by tarnishing another person's name. We must be critical about corruption, handle it legally, and also look at corruption to the down tail part of it. But for COVID, this one is unforgivable. If proven, I think it should be even murder. Because if people will use medicine, even if you are not suffering from COVID, we don't have money to buy medicine, you are killing indirectly. So this one is sick. I don't want to handle it from a political narrative. For COVID is during a pandemic, that is murder. For Global Fund to indicate they don't trust Kenya, we should not politicize this. Let's talk politics with the others. This one, let's be critical. Me and you on this show, we come out by 10 o'clock, we start picketing. I am ready to go with you.
Right.
It must not be all the time go to the streets. Let's go.
We saw some of them picketing on Friday, and these were Kenyans who are out there in the streets. But yes, the police did not give them peace.
Yes, that's what that's. We saw that on Friday. So
Yes.
in as much as me and Majimaji will go out and picket, we now need to ask the government not to come and round us up. Because what we saw on Friday, we saw a group of people, Kenyans, good Kenyans, who came somewhat Uhuru Park and were rounded up for just saying this is not right. And I quite agree.
Let us be rounded. Let us be rounded for what we believe in. So that's why I said Raila should go to the streets. Are you trying to say he's the only person who believes in Kenya that much? So in his absence, there's nobody who believes in Kenya.
Let's overlook that factor and ask this question, which is pertinent. Then what is the role of the electorate in ensuring that this is streamlined? I mean, that was that clarion call. Let's go out there and picket. Let's go out there and demonstrate. Let's go out there and call out these people who've gone against what is enshrined in the Constitution. But there were almost a handful, like there were barely numerous people who would come out boldly and say that they would go out in the street and do the same thing. Anthony, what is the role of the electorate in ensuring that this is addressed?
We should demand that the expenditure be outlined and gazetted.
I agree with Majimaji.
We should demand for procurement. Who got the tender? What was procured?
Sad or sad to speak, as we loop in Mheshimiwa, I mean, we had numerous Kenyans talking about, the fact that after post-COVID we'll have COVID millionaires and all that. We started talking about this even before it was out. Then came the 4 million mandazis and the phone calls, and we still overlooked that up until it has gotten to this point. Anthony, what is the role of the electorate?
I agree with Majimaji. All of us should get angry. I found a new friend today. My new friend is called Majimaji, and I think we should be linking. Should link. I'll
make sure there's a coffee session. Yeah.
So because we need to start picketing. I think Kenyans should get angry and mad with those. I remember the days of. I will take you back to the days of Mwai Kibaki, when all of us believed in the use of corruptions and what it does to a country, to the extent that people would come out of a matatu and tell a police officer, "You cannot do this. You cannot take a break from this matatu." I think we need to get back to those days. We now need to, if we really want to help the president, and I'm sure the president is firm on this, we have to own it as a people. The electorate have to own it. We have to get mad and angry about it. And we need to go out of our way and say this is not right. And as Majimaji demand, we need to know how much have we gotten from the donors. To what account did it hit? How was it spent? How was it procured? Who got the tender? How much was the tender? All those things. We need to have it in a national newspaper, like the Nation or the Standard, so that all of us would have that information. That way we will, Kenyans are brainy and they can know the things. Kenyans are not stupid, so we need to get the information so that we can tell who are these COVID millionaires. Otherwise, it's such a bad time when people have lost jobs, there's hue and cry everywhere, and people are still stealing. I think we need to come out and, as members of the public, and I think we initiate this, me and Majimaji, we'll form a coalition, and we will handshake on it and bring people on board to come in.
How soon are we seeing this? How soon are we seeing this? It's a noble cause, so probably a majority of the viewers would not mind, looping in or joining into this.
Yes.
Majimaji, how soon?
This we can do as soon as you link us. I will look for Majimaji probably in the course of the day or tomorrow, and then we start a movement that will start asking questions. And we will have now. That is where now the real handshake would be, not with Raila and Uhuru. The real handshake would be between Ikonya and Majimaji, and we'll form a formidable force, and we will ask questions and pick it, go out there. And that's what we need to do.
Yes.
It's going to be a Majimaji rebellion.
It's going to be a Majimaji rebellion. A revived, a new one. Yes. Majimaji, what do you say?
People must answer. 11 a.m.
11 a.m. today.
Today.
Oh.
12.
I'll hold you to that. I'll make sure that I have you again tomorrow and hold you to that. Askari watawaambia you had not, asked for these, so of course it is illegal.
No, we see there is a way. We have acts in place that stipulates on how people should go and picket, and I'm sure it's our constitutional rights. We have we will write to the respective OCSs of those areas and tell them and indicate that we want to pick and ask questions. So that's agreeable. This is something I've done before. This is something we can join it with Majimaji and still do. So, and I'm sure a lot of Kenyans will be behind us.
All right. Okay. Yes or no? 10 years down the line, the current constitution that we have, that has been looked at as a constitution that has lots of loopholes, but equally a constitution that has not been implemented, not even quarter bit of it. Maji, do you suppose it is time, or time is ripe for us to proceed and change or amend the constitution?
First of all, I'll say we have one of the best constitutions in the world, not in Africa. Before I say that, I'll start with the gains. Number one gain for me is devolution. The second gain we should have gotten away with, at least two important things, are the two-third gender rule. Those are two critical things that can bring change in our society and ensure social freedoms and political representation. Me, I'm a believer in political stability. So, two-third gender rule will bring the women voice into debates and into proper bills being realized, and their voice in participation. They are our mothers, they are our sisters. So, two-third gender rule is a failure that needs to be materialized, and then devolution is beautiful, needs to be enhanced. Because it is a good constitution, I would fight for implementation. And for it to be implemented, we need political goodwill. So maybe what we've lacked across the 10 years, maybe is proper political goodwill. When Kibaki came in, they tried it, but devolution had some challenges based on lack of exposure of the governors, but on their second term, they started getting it. So there are things that come in piecemeal and over. Change sometimes is progressive.
Yeah.
Now, if we need to change it, I would say no constitution can remain permanent. And then leadership is always situational. And people advance in behavior, mannerisms, acceptance of new world. So constitution can always change if there is pressure from the people, because it's about people. So I cannot object any change if it's going to advance life transformations. So be it. I would say again, Kenyans also are not so much aware of the constitution. So in celebrating this constitution at 10, I want to kindly ask mwananchi wa kawaida, tafadhali, kama uwezi isoma yote, kuna chapter 2 itakusaidia. Na ndio tukule hii birthday mzuri leo. Kenya ula niona asome tu chapter 1. Apate nguvu.
Yeah.
Achue nchi ni yake. Na nitatranslate hivi. Nchi iko hivi. Sisi tumenunua duka, kioski yetu, ama supermarket yetu tumechanga tukanunua. Tukasema hatujui kazi ya kurun supermarket. Tukatafuta manager, tukatafuta storekeeper, tukatafuta askari, tukatafuta accountant, tukatafuta wafanyikazi. Tukamwambia ndio hii supermarket yetu, fanyeni kazi mtuletee profits na returns. That is how the country is. The supermarket should not change to be for the workers. The president, the government, the executive are our workers. So let us not give up our rights. And sell us market for no cash. So chapter 1 is what I want Kenyans to celebrate with Constitution at 10. Read chapter 1, sovereignty. Na ukitoka hapo, nisome ingine. Chapter 6 on integrity.
Yeah.
Because we are going to an election. If you find that man is not of integral value, is not fitting on chapter 6, do not carry your vote for him. That is how we can save this country and ensure we have good leadership as well. Chapter 6, kuna wengine wanafukuzwa hata kwa makaunti. Waliiba na wanarudi na elect. Today.
Wanasema mwizi ni wao.
To give the happy birthday Constitution at 10 kwa kusoma chapter 1 na chapter 6.
All right.
So let me chip in and say this.
Yes.
I quite agree with Majimaji that what we have today as a country is one of the best constitutions in this world. I quite agree that a lot of, in as much as we have not really utilized that constitution, there's quite a lot that can be proud of. I want to say this: over those 10 years, me and Majimaji can now litigate on our own. The Okia Umtatas of this day and age were born out of this constitution, that a normal Kenyan can put together a document and move to court, not necessarily through a lawyer, and litigate and put your case across, and you're heard. I think to me that's a major gain, But we found, we got. The other very important thing is what my friend has alluded to in terms of the gains that we've had in terms of devolution. Devolution is one of the best concepts. What we don't have is that. It has been mismanaged by people who ought to be in jail right now, although they're not because of the issues that we indicated. But the concept itself was one of the best, to make sure that we devolve funds and services to the common mwananchi, that people can feel that we have a government. People can. And one of the best things that was brought by this constitution is what we call public participation. That we can now involve our people. Nothing can pass without getting a note of the common mwananchi. If I want to do a road, rather if I have like 30 million in my ward, for example, the priorities of what ought to be done comes from the people. You have to carry out a public participation, and that is enshrined in that constitution. And one of the things that I must tell people is that a constitution is just a skeleton of, we call it a mother law, and then we do subsidiary legislations. Look at what we have in terms of the County Government Act. There was an amendment that was done just the other day, and I want to applaud the Parliament for doing that. I think what we need to do is that we have been given an opportunity as people. Mathematics today can do a legislative proposal and bring it to me, or even take it to the clerk of the Kiambu County Assembly, saying we need to put in place this and that kind of a law or legislation, and it happens. I think those are the many gains, or just kidogo of the many gains. And I also want to agree with him. When it comes to chapter 1, I think that is the best thing. But people should know this country is ours. We decide what we want to do with this country. We make decisions, including those people who call themselves, who are driving big cars, who've been elected into offices, including me. We are the people who took them there, and we have the powers to remove them. This country is ours, and we run it. These people represent us. They are there on our behalf. That is why I call upon every leader to remember that this is a responsibility that you are given by people to go and represent them. It is not about you. It is not what you think. It is about those people. So you should keep going back to those people, asking them what is it that we can do, and then that is what you take to either the National Assembly, to the Senate, or to any county assembly. I think we have so many gains in this constitution. I think we have something to celebrate. In as much as we quite agree there are a few things that we need to change or even add through maybe the process called BBI and that kind of thing. But I can say so far so good. We have a very good constitution. We need to roll it out. But it's really unfortunate that the 2/3 gender rule has now found itself, a place in the society. So that's why you need to castigate the national government and tell them it is time that the 2-gender rule is implemented, and we need to have it. It should be past us now. We should have we should be finished with this thing once and for all.
All right, gentlemen, thank you so much for the great insights and importantly for gracing the session this morning. Looking forward to have you some other time. Honorable Anthony Konya, Kiambu Township Member of County Assembly, and Julius Owino, alias or commonly known as Maji, political analyst, and also the MD Get Ready. Thank you so much for the great insights. We look forward to see you again. And on that note, we lock it up on this session of the Weekend Politics as we cross over to the lifestyle segment, where we'll be discussing GMO and food security, a session that you equally do not want to miss out on. So keep it right here.
And I'm waiting for my number.
Apologies for coming in a little bit too late, but all the same, we're here. And as promised, we have specialists who are going to address the aspect of GMO, organic foods, their comparison, their goodness, their disadvantages. And we also take a look at food security. We're hoping to get a hold of Dr. Peter Mukaya, who's going to give us, a little bit of the technical perspective of it later on. But importantly, we start off with Emily Wahome, who's a consultant nutritionist, to take us through this session. Emily, how are you? Good to have you. Looking good, and we're grateful that you're here this morning. All right, so we're all about nutrition, and nutrition is key. Most of the Mondays we do nutrition, and today we base our focus on GMOs and organic foods. And you being the specialist, we'd love for you to start off, first of all, by introducing yourself some more, and even telling us, the difference between these two and the importance of them anyway.
All right, thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome.
My name is Emily Wahome.
Right.
Happy to be here this morning. I am a nutritionist by profession. I'm an educator. I lecture nutrition and dietetics, and I love imparting knowledge. Apart from that, I'm a mother, I'm a wife.
Awesome.
And I love impacting the young people.
Right.
So nutrition is very key, and I'm very passionate about it. So anytime I have something I can share to help people live better, healthier lives, and adopt healthier, nutritious meals and diet, then I'm always happy to share that knowledge.
Yes, so and we all agree that nutrition is huge and large. That's why today we focus briefly on the GMO. So yes, what exactly is it? And the difference between it and the organic foods?
Yeah, so for a long time we've been having a debate. I'm sure most of us have heard about the term GMO. Most of us have heard the term organic foods. But sometimes maybe we may not really know the direction to take. Is it really GMO? Is it really organic foods? So majorly, maybe we start by seeing what is this organic foods, what is GMO. So basically GMO, it's a food whose the genetic material, which is basically the DNA, has been altered such that it doesn't occur in its natural form. So maybe traditionally, we are aware that the crops that we are having, they are occurring in their natural form. The way they are, that is how they were. And probably the modification that was done is what we know was called grafting. But now through biotechnology, or what we call genetic engineering, scientists have come up with other scientific forms or ways to modify crops. Like if I give an example, we have the first crop I think that was modified is the tomato that we commonly know that we use for cooking. And what we're trying to do is to make the tomato have a longer shelf life, because they get spoiled quite fast. So they modified it for that. So it was taking longer to ripen, and therefore it was staying on the shelf for a longer period of time. So you find genetic modification majorly is being done for increasing shelf life, increasing productivity. There's also some crops, like for example, if I would give an example of a crop that has been modified for nutritional purposes, is what is called golden rice, but it's not yet in the market. It has not yet been approved to come into our shelves. But what they are trying to do, the scientists, they are trying to improve the beta carotene, which is a vitamin A, because we know that most of us, or most nations, rice is their staple food. And vitamin A is one of the vitamins that we have deficiencies in, and it is very key in boosting the immunity. So the scientists were using the GM technology, they're modifying that rice to have more of vitamin A, but it's not yet in the market yet, because it's still going through the process.
All right, before we even go to the organic aspect of it, then what would want to ask the GM, mode of course ensuring that these crops are staying longer in the shelves, are good enough, you incorporate some more nutrients in it. What are the dangers, or what are the goodness of us getting to that point? Because then it's something that has been adapted across, and it's hugely being incorporated in our meals and all that, and our crops out there.
Yeah, I think what I can say is that there is a lot of research that still needs to continue being done. Because if you look at the research that has been done so far, there are some dangers that have been put there. Like for example, because of that altering the gene of this particular crop is not appearing in its natural form, there is risk of allergic reactions. Like if something that is introduced into a crop that was not there before, and I consume that particular food, and I'm allergic to that particular product,
right?
Then I'm likely to have an allergic reaction, as opposed to when I ate it in its natural form, probably I wouldn't get that.
The allergen.
Then there's, yes, the allergen. So allergic reactions is one of them. Then some of the products or organisms that are used for genetic modification are bacteria and viruses.
Yeah.
So over time, scientists have been trying to look, there's issue of resistance to antibiotics, for example. Could it be because of the bacteria that sometimes is being used to modify the foods that people are consuming, such that by the time you're having an infection and you need an antibiotic, you've been consuming a lot of these bacteria and all that, then you become resistant. Yeah. Then there's a time that where there was so much discussion about GM and cancer.
Right.
Though we are saying there's no conclusive research, but this altering of the DNA, we need to do more research, continue doing more research to know whether really, is it posing health risk?
Yeah.
But unfortunately, this would have to be research that is being done over a long period of time, following subjects, human subjects, the ethical issues coming, because you find that these effects are not upfront. Like I consume that food and I'm having
then instantly, yes.
You know,
Yeah.
it is something that maybe that will take years, even 10, 20, 15 years,
and you see that.
for me to see the outcome. So
Alright.
a lot of research need to be done. But those are some of the risks that have already been put on paper that could occur if we continue consuming the GM foods.
And is there anything positive, Eve, at all, anything positive or anything to show, when we say that we are going to consume, the genetically modified foods?
Yeah, if you look at it, most of the GM foods, in terms of productivity, the farmers have reported a higher yield.
All right.
When they use the genetically modified crops as opposed to the other.
Yeah.
Then when it comes to pesticides, they use less pesticides because most of those crops are modified to be pest resistant and also resistant to diseases.
Okay.
When it comes to even the weeds, the time the farmers and the resources they use for weeding the farms, they are less. So in terms of even crop production costs, they go low.
Right.
And I think that's the reason why when you compare the prices of GM foods and organic foods, you find the GM foods then they have lower costs.
Lower, yes.
So of course the benefits are there, but at the end of the day I think we should also focus on the health benefits of the foods. Are they posing any health risks? Are we having the health benefits? But also when there is some research that has been done to compare the nutritional value of GM foods and organic foods, there was no really conclusive, but it has shown that majorly there's no much difference.
All right.
When it comes to the nutritional value. Although now the GM foods that are specifically modified to have a particular nutrient like that vitamin A, it may have a higher vitamin A content than another one that doesn't have that. But at the same time, you have other methods.
Right.
Apart from GM, we have other methods of fortification.
Fortification, yeah.
Yes,
All right, so speaking of GM, then the world has really adopted this. And the question then would be, does it pose any food security threats in any way? And in the long term, do we stand a chance of having, more and more production processes, more and more foods, of course, to a point whereby, yes, we're probably even going to enjoy surplus?
Yeah, research also has shown that the GM foods are resistant, like I've said, to pesticides, and then also the crop yield is higher. So some people have proposed that method as a way of maybe solving some of the food security issues we have.
All right.
But at the same time, when you talk about food security, the food safety aspect is there. So that aspect should not be ignored.
Okay.
Because I may have food in plenty, but is it safe for human consumption?
Yeah.
So those are the things that we need to put into perspective, do more research on, and maybe probably come into conclusive statements that actually this food we can genetically modify it this way if it is acceptable. It will be safe. It will give us higher crop yield. We will not use so much of pesticides on it, and even the cost of production will not be so high. And therefore, at the end of it, all the consumer will not have to give so much for them to get the product.
All right, let's talk organic then, organic foods.
Yeah. So organic foods is a natural way of growing crops without the pesticides, without the fertilizers, using the natural form of all this. So over time, farmers have started adopting the organic way of farming because of reduction of toxins in the food, because most of the toxins, actually we are the ones who introduce them as humans, or they are introduced through the environment by use of chemicals like pesticides, herbicides, and all that. So the organic farming is basically farming without any artificial or synthetic materials like pesticides and herbicides. And also, if you are using any of that, it's in natural form. Like in Kiambu, I saw some farmers growing vegetables. Instead of spraying them with the pesticides, they're using urine from rabbits. And actually, the crops are not being invaded by pests. So you see that's a natural form of growing that particular crop. So for me, I think that if we would go that way, although our research has shown that it's a more expensive way of producing, but if it is made cost effective over time, probably then it could be an effective way.
One would then argue these are natural resources, really readily available, so to speak. Why is it then considered an expensive process in comparison to this other one?
I think it's because it has not been there for quite a long time, although traditionally farmers were using, for example, if I want to grow my crops and improve the yield, I use manure. But you see now, there were other things that were introduced over time by scientists, like fertilizers. And farmers convinced that actually if you use fertilizer, this is what is going to happen. It will even give you a higher yield. And as a farmer, I want a higher yield, especially I'm a commercial farmer, I want a higher yield so that I may be able to get more money at the end of the harvest. So I think we need to do more in the organic farming. Yeah, because the organic farmers, the pure organic farmers that are certified in Kenya, I don't think there are many. But I think it's an area that we need to explore.
Is this where we're coming from, the organic farming, and then we came to GM, and then all of a sudden we find ourselves wanting to go back to organic?
I think so, because traditionally I believe our grandmothers did not have fertilizers. Yeah, they didn't have pesticides. Probably these pests were not as many as they are today, and therefore they were using natural ways of farming.
All right, and good news here. We have Dr. Peter Mukaya joining us this morning once again. He's the CEO of Organic Consumers Alliance, and we'd love to hear from him his take on, the difference between these two and how they complement each other, especially at this point where, we're getting at the science bit of it, right? And Daktari, good morning. Hello, Daktari. I'm not able to hear Daktari again. All right, let's keep trying. Meanwhile, we'll come back to that. And then one would want to ask, how do they get to complement each other? Or at what point do they counter the value of the other? This is now organic foods and GM foods.
I think what we can say is that we need to have education. We need to have education to public that is not biased. We need to put information out here to the public. If it is this product that is GM, let the public know that this is a GM product. What are the benefits of this product? What could be the risks? Such that, for example, even in the supermarket, there's a GM rice and there's one that is organic. It is properly labeled. As a consumer, I'm able to make an informed decision. As opposed to when it is just there, I don't know the difference between this and this. So if there's proper education about organic foods and GM foods, consumers will be able to make informed decisions.
All right.
Yes.
Okay, Daktari is here with us. Good morning, Daktari.
Good morning to you all.
Good to have you.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I am here with Wahome Emily, and we're also expanding some more on this conversation on organic foods and GMOs, how they complement each other, the differences between the same, the dangers of the same, and we'd love to hear that scientific perspective of the same coming from you.
Right. Yeah, just to complement what Emily has shared.
Right.
I agree 100% with her sharing, and she's put it in the layman's language, so to say. But basically, like you've alluded to, there have been 3 transitions of safe and healthy food. First, starting with what we call seeds produced or foods produced from what we call Halem seeds. Halem seed is this is basically what we call indigenous seeds that were handed over from generation to generation. that were not sold, that were not patented, that were selected based on their breed and their quality, and that were locally adapted, resilient, and not.
This connection won't allow us to have a conversation with Daktari, but all the same, we'll keep trying until we get this. If we're not successful today, then for sure we'll have Daktari again to expound some more on this. But yes, just to pick up from where he left it, and we were looking at how these two complement each other and how these two in a way equally contradict the benefits of the other. And one would argue that in as much as we'd want to focus organic and stay organic, it is getting expensive. It is getting almost impossible for people to be able to enjoy this gladly. What can we do to ensure that we transition ourselves back to where we were initially?
Okay, thank you so much for that. I think from where we left, we need to go back probably to where we were. I think natural is always good. Yeah. That is what I would say. Like, for example, if I'm growing my vegetables, for example, and we've seen people showing us even how I can grow vegetables on my own balcony. I don't need a huge farm to produce my own vegetable, for example, to consume. Yeah. If we approach a way in which we start producing food and wanting to produce this in a natural way as much as possible, because in Kenya, majorly, we don't have a particular food like the way we have in the US, GM food. Yes. What we have in Kenya is ingredients. Right. Most of the processed food, by the way, in the market, they have GM. Yeah. Because most of the foods have soya. Most of the soya that is produced, like 90% is GM, is genetically modified. All right. Corn is another one. So you find that the ingredients of GM are in the foods that we are having in our supermarkets. But in Kenya, we don't have a food in the shelf that is labeled probably GM. But in the US, 60 to 70% of the foods on the shelf is labeled GM, and they have the organic food. So the consumer chooses. So maybe what I can say is that when I speak to the developing countries in Africa, because we have really been practicing agriculture for very long, maybe we need to look in a way in which we can go back to our natural way of producing food, because that, I think, could be the safest way of ensuring that we are reducing the toxins that is in our foods. We are making our foods more wholesome and nutritious. But of course, there are other many issues like soil degradation and pollution that has affected all this and affected even the crop yield, because food security is not only about GM making the yield more. There's issue of climate change that has been brought up because of pollution and other things that because we've affected the environment. So probably if we look into those issues, then we may not have to really rely so much on GM for food security. There are other many ways in which we can become food secure. Yeah.
Or we're looking at an advanced stage of agriculture, an advanced stage of trade, where we conduct agriculture that, will sustain us across. And sometimes we find that we have to import, and we also have to export lots of foods, that are grown locally. So in such a scenario, then how do we come in handy and, talk of these other options that you're bringing on board that would help us still maintain the natural? What, of course, Daktari, if I have picked something, is talking about the Hellions and the indigenous, the ones that we originally had, and make sure that we make the best of them, that they are able to produce numerously so that we can get surplus for export, and equally import foods that are indeed good to us as a people, as opposed to focusing much on GM.
I think we need to invest more on agriculture. Yeah. I feel as time went on, maybe because of industrialization, we moved from being agriculturalists to industrialists. So farmers over time also have gotten discouraged because, for example, if I produce a particular kind of food and I have used resources and then I don't have market for it, or the prices for me to sell are too low, or I don't have means or easy means to export my produce to make some income, then I get discouraged, and even an entrepreneur, definitely I'll move to something else that will make me more money. So if you invest in agriculture in such a way that if I produce, I'll have market for my produce. If I produce, probably the farm inputs and all that I need will not be at very high costs, and therefore I can be able to access those farm inputs and do farming, produce food for consumption and also for commercialization, then farmers will be encouraged to do more agriculture than it is currently happening. Although we are seeing a shift, people are starting now to wanting to start moving towards agriculture. If you go back to the rural areas, people have started slowly but surely adopting to agriculture, but I think I've seen a shift in crops that are for export. Like avocado farming in the rural areas has really increased because there is market in the Asian countries and the US for the product. So you see, if there is market, the farmer is given the specification for you to have a quality product at the end of it all. This is what you need to do. They are going to do it because at the end of the day, if I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a farmer, I want to make food. So I want to make money, and therefore I'll do that. So I think we need to invest more in agriculture. We need to give more education to farmers, more education to the public about how to produce healthier foods and more nutritious food, because at the end of the day, when I consume food, it should nourish my body. If it's not nourishing my body, then I'm putting kind of, if I say, garbage in my body. So at the end of the day, at the value chain, at the end of the day, when I'm getting that product, even if it's from the supermarket, what is the quality? What is the nutritional quality of that food? I think as a nutritionist, as a professional, that would really be my concern.
All right.
Yes.
Yes. Mokami Jane here asks, at what stages then is food processed at this particular point? Or is genetically modified? That's what she asked. So I would want to assume probably she's asking at the point of planting, at the point of processing, or at the point of storage or anything.
The food, if you look at it, the food is modified at the point of the seed.
Okay.
So by the time the farmer is planting the crop, the seed is already modified. So if I am producing genetically modified rice, the seed that I'm going to use will be genetically modified. Okay. That's the point at which they are modified.
All right.
Yes.
Okay, well, and again, we have Daktari. Looks like we're not going to give up on him.
Yes.
And sadly enough, time is not so much on our side. But then again, we'd probably get a proper roundup from him. Daktari, yes, we're back to you.
Yes, well, I can tell you this has never happened before, and I suspect it's happening because some forces don't want this message to come out.
Money has been poured.
Emily has done a wonderful job. I mean, she's she's
done magic for us. I agree.
She has done magic for us, and really, the organic food is the natural food that our ancestors handed over to us. And of course, it starts with the seed. And remember, organic isn't just plants. Organic is also animals. Okay. And I dare say now, and this we could discuss maybe in other sessions, organic is soon also going to be non-organic with human beings. Hybridization is a natural selection process. Most of the seeds we are eating, most of the animals we are eating, process of that natural interaction between different seeds, I would say, of the same species. GMOs, good people, are absolutely something out of the ordinary. They're not only just abnormal in the sense that they are not natural. There is actually a human-made laboratory process of deliberately mixing genes across species sometimes. Sometimes even between animals and plants, like in the case of varieties of maize, we call PT maize, PT cotton, that would have never occurred in nature if they were not deliberately manipulated, man-made in the labs, and used such that if nature was around on its own, in a million years, those seeds would not have been produced. This is extremely fundamental, and therefore, hybrids, organic seeds, okay, but when you go to GMOs, it's a completely different ballgame. These are very unsafe seeds. They cause allergies, they cause DNA damage, they cause what we call teratogenicity, or changes in DNA that may result in cancers. And basically, quite frankly, they were designed to work with chemicals like glyphosate, which is so-called Roundup weed killer. And from what we discussed in the session last time when we shared with a team of several of you, if it is possible, they're the kind of seeds that we would not welcome into our country because they are not only unsafe, they are also unhealthy for human beings. They are also a risk to the environment because they create a scenario where they don't mix well with other normal organisms.
Okay.
The sense that they take over the ecosystem and reduce biodiversity and the ability for us to find the type of not only plants but also animals, and even for us human beings. Now, this is something we can discuss later on with regard with the current COVID-19 scenario. It's a kind of seeds that, quite frankly, are unsafe, unhealthy, and not good for the environment, for the soil, and for human consumption. So, like Emily said, I can only quickly add that maybe we plan another session because time is not on our side.
Yeah.
And just share that we Africans need to retain the safe, diverse, healthy, nutrient-rich foods that our ancestors, our grandmothers, our grandfathers, ate all these years. Why? Because they understand our bodies, they provide health and nourishment. That's much more than GMOs can ever provide.
Wow,
so I'll pause here for now and say that let's carry on this discussion. Let's keep sharing. Let's discuss. Let's dialogue.
How about we have a deal that we have this discussion some more on Monday? Same time.
Absolutely.
Yes, on Monday at exactly 8:10 we'll be having this conversation and expand it even more all the way to 9 a.m. Right, Emily? I hope Dr. will be available. I hope Emily will be available. I had to put them on the spot so they do not say no. Yeah? Yes. So we promise you that you're going to get more information on this next Monday. That is on our nutrition segment. Thank you so much once again, Dr. Peter Mugaya, for the great insights. Dr. Peter Mugaya is the CEO of Organic Consumers and Alliance. And of course, thank you so much, Emily. Emily Wahome is a consultant nutritionist, or a nutritionist, just so to speak. Thank you so much for the great insight. We've picked something, and I'm sure it's something that we'd want to learn even more about. So we have a date next week on the same. And on that very note, like we say, time is not on our side. So we wind it up at that. Anything else you want to say?
Thank you so much. Yes. Thank you so much. I think what I would say and what I would want to tell my fellow Kenyans and anybody who is watching, food is medicine. Yeah. Make food your medicine. If you make food your medicine, you don't have to keep visiting the doctor. You don't have to keep feeling pain. Every time you put food on the plate, let it be food that is nourishing your body.
Right.
And most of the time, as you make decisions about your food, just pick food that is as natural as possible. You know, like if it's breakfast, choose the arrowroots, choose the sweet potatoes. That is natural food.
Right.
That is wholesome. Vegetables, a wide variety of vegetables. And it will be healthy. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. And the little knowledge that I have on matters nutrition and see water is life, right?
Oh, yeah. Water is life. Water is life.
Let's see you again tomorrow. Thank you. My name is Linda Alela. Do enjoy the rest of your viewing.